Hi, everyone. This is episode 2 of Story Starters. I'm Leilani.
And I am Sonia. So Story Starters is a webcast. We are having conversations about life stories and hearing them directly from the people who experience them. Today's episode is about growing up Gen X, those that have experienced their childhood all the way through high school in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Today's guests are Michele Durbin and Rosanna Franklin. They are Gen X-ers born in 1970. They're 2 lifelong friends since the 5th grade, growing up in Arcadia, a suburb of Los Angeles, 20 minutes away from Hollywood. Their memories and stories transcend major life milestones, elementary through college and beyond. Michele and Rosanna still remember their childhood home phone numbers, their neck aches from holding the phone receiver between their ear and their shoulder. And it was life before microwaves, sufficient parental or any parental supervision, really, and bike helmets. Some of their favorite and oldest memories together include spending entire summer vacations together, watching soap operas like General Hospital, and getting Coke Slurpees from 7-Eleven and crank calling strangers from a phone book. Michele enjoyed hanging out with friends and doing crazy teenager things, going to the gym for step aerobics, fully decked out in a leotard, huge hair, full makeup, and the Reebok high tops. And Rosanna enjoyed dancing to 80s icons such as Prince and Michael Jackson, doing aerobics classes too, in her high tops and leg warmers, playing Pac-Man on her family's Apple II home computer, and having free range until it was dark. Today, Michele is a super mom of 3 daughters and married to her junior high school sweetheart and sells drugs for a living. Haha, she's in biotech, so she'll talk about that a little bit more. Rosanna also is a super mom of 2 boys, started her adult journey in Australia, but now lives in San Francisco, where after obtaining her doctorate, she enjoys helping people through her psychology practice. So we are going to add Rosanna and Michele to our webcast.
Hi.
Hi there.
Welcome, you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yay, we're excited. Thank you, Michele. Thank you, Rosanna.
You're very welcome.
What an awesome intro and a little glimpse of their background. So this is a new one for us. We brought in 2 guests at the same time for a reason, because they have those unique memories from the 80s. But we're going to get started with something that Leilani and I love to do. So this is a quick exercise. It's called rapid fire questions. And so Michele and Rosanna, we're going to ask one question, and really quickly, first thing that comes to your mind, you're going to answer as it relates to, as you recall it from the 80s. So going back to your time growing up as a Gen Xer. And I'll just keep on going.
Okay.
All right. Question 1. I'll go with Rosanna if you answer first, and then we'll have Michele follow.
Okay.
Okay.
Deal.
Ready, set, go. Who was your favorite artist or band?
Oh my God. I would say Michael Jackson, but right now I'm going to say Van Halen.
Oh.
Shout out to them. They're in my heart right
Yes.
now.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I would second that, Van Halen for sure. And other than that, I'd say mine was Journey. There you go.
Okay. Next one. Favorite TV show?
Me?
Yeah, Rosanna.
Oh, Facts of Life.
Excellent.
And a shout out.
What?
And a shout out to Schoolhouse Rock.
I learned so much from Schoolhouse Rock. It wasn't even the teachers, it was Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah, with both of them, Facts of Life and Schoolhouse Rock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michele?
I loved Oprah.
Mm.
And I also loved the Dynasty.
Oh.
Nighttime glam soap. Yes.
I didn't know that about you, or I didn't remember.
You shut it out.
All right. Favorite movie, Rose? Rosanna.
Oh, The Outsiders.
Oh, I think that was like the
that
first
was
movie
such
I
a
ever
good
saw.
movie. You're making me second guess
Over
what
and
I
over.
would want to say.
Mhm.
I would say my favorite movie. I loved Sylvester Stallone. So the Rocky movies.
Mhm.
Great. All right.
Which Bobby
favorite-
would be proud because he's watched it 4,000 times, and now I'm sick of it.
I love it. Oh gosh. Okay. A little bit harder. Favorite hangout.
Oh, my back room near the pool. Where we were all alone.
Too. It's Rosanna's house. We
Yeah.
had some good times at my house with my grandma, who was supposed to be watching us, that wasn't. But I would say for sure Rosanna's house, because
Yeah.
she had the back private room.
My parents left us alone, and us young people, like from junior high on, could have our own private space back outside. I had a pool, and then there was a room next to a garage, and so we just hung out there. I mean, if it was does that count? Or I can name a public place.
We did nothing wrong either.
Who needs a public place? Rosanna's back.
Oh.
All right. Next one. Favorite word, or it could be a saying or a phrase.
Like, totally, for
Yeah.
sure. Oh my God.
All together.
Mine was rad, totally rad. And sadly,
That's so
I
rad.
still say those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What is one thing you hated about the 70s or 80s?
Lots of pink, taffeta, and ruffles.
You hated all
I hated, there's a couple things. As a whole, I just didn't like that era of when you're a young teenager and passing through, and all the insecurities and fears you have, and the way you look at yourself and compare yourself. It just, like, junior high was hard that way, I think. And I hated midriff shirts. Hated them. They were so in. I never wore them, didn't feel comfortable in them. I was a little busty, so I would have looked really bad. But yeah, I hated those.
That's good. A lot of clothing types.
Still hate them because they came back in.
They did.
Yeah.
Mhm. What about something you loved?
I
Could be 80s.
Oh, yeah. I love the music videos. I loved them.
Oh, yeah.
MTV and music videos. It's not, it was just a short period. I mean, it went on, and now it doesn't exist like it did then. That was definitely what I loved. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very true. Music would have been mine too. We're very similar, you guys, if you haven't noticed, because I would have said that as well. And I think what I liked about it too is you didn't have things like iTunes or Spotify. Like, you had to buy the album. If you wanted to see them, you had to, before videos even, you went to the concert. So it was a lot more investment and a lot more time that you had to take to enjoy the music. I think I also love too, in looking back, that we didn't have texting or phones, or we had to do a lot of our socializing in person. And I think that things just go a lot deeper and more real and a lot less hurtful when that's how you're forced to communicate.
Well, you had a break. You had a break from school. You had a break from people. You had your own space.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
we just don't get that as much
None.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, good ones. Okay, I have one final one. If you could describe the 80s in one word, what would it be?
Flashy, big hair, neon.
I would say it was transformational. I mean, just that era, even like growing up in those very special years in that era, is so much, you go through so much change. And I think that era kind of changed the world. My kids still love 80s clothes and 80s music, and that's what we grew up with. So I would say transformational. A lot of growing in that time.
Great word.
And I just have to add in that I borrowed my daughter's Journey T-shirt for this. They love that time.
Yeah.
I have my original Duran Duran shirt. This is my
Nice.
original concert.
Wow.
Is it original? That's awesome.
It is, and it still fits. Kind of.
That's incredible. You went to the Duran Duran concert?
I did my first concert ever, Duran Duran.
Oh, nice.
That's actually
That's
a great question.
first.
That's a great
The
first
better
one.
question is, how many times have you gone, Leilani?
That is a good question.
Oh gosh, I probably have been to 5 Duran Duran concerts. I went to Power Station, which was the John Taylor split off because, he was my guy.
I was wondering.
Yeah, and I actually went with my niece a few years back when they came to San Diego. So to see them as an adult now and kind of experience it as an adult was totally awesome too.
Super fun. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. That was fun. We're going to take these stories and go a little deeper, if that's okay. These are your stories. These are your words, your memories, which I love. Want to get a little bit of a feel for your childhood, the early days. What was it like? Maybe, Michele, you could start with that.
Okay. How early are we going? As far back as I can remember?
Yeah, elementary school.
Okay.
And we'll work our way up to high school.
Okay. So I came from an Italian family, and my mom and dad were married until I was 6, and my maternal grandma lived with me really my whole life. And even after I got married, she lived with Bobby and I and my girls. But so the odd thing about my parents getting divorced is they divorced as friends. And so all through my childhood, my time was split. Our holidays were always together. My dad and my new stepmom, who actually became my mom's best friend, we spent every holiday together. And I had a very caring, loving, way overprotective upbringing with them. I have one brother that I tormented the living hell out of, and Rosanna knows because she was there for part of it. But yeah, I mean, my story's crazy. I had a grandpa that was in the mafia, so I grew up going to visit him once a week, even though he was a tyrant, but that's what Italian people do. And we would sit in his living room, and he had cameras up in the corner that were filming outside, and he was under surveillance, and you could see the FBI cars just sitting out there. I mean, nothing ever came of it, but I grew up around that, and I grew up thinking that there was nothing to it, and that kind of stuff was normal, or that screaming all your emotions and no secrets whatsoever because everyone's in everyone's business was my life. But they would have jumped in front of a train for any of us. So it was equal on both sides. So I would say that describes some of my childhood. And then Rosanna came into my childhood in 5th grade.
Yeah.
And she was the sister that I never had. And just from the get-go, I fell in love with her. And I mean, we spent all of our time together. Yeah.
Rosanna, tell us a little bit about your childhood, or maybe about your friendship and how that started.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to start a little bit similar to what Michele said, to start with my parents or my family. And in a way, you can sort of see maybe what drew us together. My parents, my dad is from India. My mom is Jewish American background, is they're Russian Jews, that she was first generation. And when they moved to Arcadia, they were minorities. In fact, my mom presents, she's white, and had to tell the real estate agent that my dad was Italian. Because was too afraid that they might not sell to someone who didn't have a European background. And so and my grandmother from India lived with us as well. And so my house, I was, I was a minority in a community that was predominantly white at the time, and Christian, Catholic, and the first friend I made, I was 3 years old, and she also came from a family that immigrated from Mexico. So at 3 years old, I met this other 3-year-old whose name is also Michele, and she had curly, kinky hair. And she, I had a grandma living with me. Her name was Maji. And she's like, I've got a Lala living with me. And so we sort of bonded in that way. And unlike, similar to what Michele was saying with the family, when she said there was a lot of, like yelling and emotions and this, my family also, in a different way, definitely in a different way, but was very volatile. And so I didn't quite know like how to talk about that or how to deal with that. And Michele, I'm wondering, I knew this stuff about you, but did we ever have explicit conversations around just the volatility that was happening in our families and the fragility of the system?
We haven't probably as adults, oddly, because of both of our backgrounds in psychology too. But I think it's just understood because we were there. Like I was there. I was there when you would call me and put the phone down and let me hear. And you were there when I would pop off and my mom would haul off and just smack me straight in the face for being sarcastic. And it just, I think it doesn't really, we don't have to explain it to each other because we were there. Other people might think, whoa, but yeah, we both experienced it in different ways, but we experienced something extremely similar. And very mild grandmothers that were, like our second moms.
Yeah, they were the safe ones.
They were absolutely the safe place.
Safe one. I don't know if you know this, but your home and your family was my safe haven. I felt safe with you in your home.
I love that you did. Yes, you shared that with me, and it's touched me ever since. Even with the craziness, but yes,
it was a better crazy.
It was loving crazy because my mom would do that and then be hugging and kissing you the next moment. She just had a very volatile temper.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I want to talk about when we met though, also, because that was something in our early childhood. When I first met Michele, I was a bit afraid of her. I was afraid of you. You were
I was a bully.
You were tough, but we were friends. We were like in a small group of friends. There was like 4 of us, right? And we were all friends.
Yes.
But we got really close that summer after 5th grade and on. And I think what really drew me to you was that I thought you were fearless. And there was something about, you can tell me if that's how you saw yourself. But I saw you as so courageous and so fearless and didn't really not overly worried about consequences. You had a gut, but I mean that in like, you had a verve for life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say, I think that I felt that way. I think that especially my dad was the biggest, he still is, but he's old, loving, caring. If anyone's going to instill a sense of security in their daughter, it would have been my dad. And I think he did. But I grew up around a bunch of boys that used to like to fight and and I became that way too. I didn't see that I was a girl, and I really wasn't afraid in scenarios where I probably should have been scared to death.
I love that about you.
That's so interesting.
That you felt that. And I'm tiny, like I'm sitting down, but when I am small, I think I'm 5'2". My daughters argue with me that I'm not, but
but you were that size when you were like 10. You know what I mean? Like you were 10, 11, 12, 13.
I grew and stopped.
Yeah.
And moving into junior high and high school, it's so fascinating to hear you say this and as you reflect on who you were, and you were like, I guess, tomboyish, or you were fighting with the boys. And
Yes.
you know, we found some funny photos that we wanted to share, and I don't see you as a boy in those photos.
Well, I really wasn't when Rosanna's talking either. I would do that with my big long ponytails and my matching dittos.
Yeah.
I just had a bit of fire inside of me, I suppose you could say.
So this screams Aquanet and a bunch of, you know, the taffeta and the lace and maybe the fur
Look
that
at the
Rosanna
lace
did
gloves.
in the 80s. Talk about a little bit about how the 80s pop culture affected you, whether it was the fashion or the maybe celebrities or even the music a little bit we talked about earlier.
Well,
Okay.
definitely the music.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tell me.
wouldn't you say, Rosanna, the music kind of shaped who we were and what we liked and what they sang about. And I mean, comparing to now, my kids, I have 20-year-olds, 27 down to 21, and the 21-year-old likes rap music. So just the lyrics and all the culture that goes around that is so much different than what we grew up with. And I think,
who did you listen to? Tell me some of the bands or artists.
well, Rosanna, we loved Michael Jackson. Rosanna had Michael Jackson wallpaper that she made herself out of Teen Beat magazine pictures. And then, well, definitely Van Halen, huge. I mean, very uncanny timing. So well said by you, Sonia, that we were doing this after the unfortunate death of Eddie Van Halen, because he was like a household figure for us.
Didn't a couple of the band members grow up in your
They
area?
did, yes.
Yeah.
So many of our high school friends were still friends. Like even this weekend, 6 of us are meeting for somebody's 50th birthday. But all of us have a connection in some way to Van Halen.
Yeah.
We were all talking back and forth, whether living near them. I didn't share mine, but I worked in college in Old Town Pasadena with Davy Lee Roth's sister, Allison. And he used to come and hang out in the back patio there with his model girlfriends that just blew your mind. But yeah, we all had a heartfelt connection beyond just loving Van Halen. You kind of feel like you knew of them. Yeah. Davy Lee Roth babysat our friend Laura when she was little. Like crazy stuff.
I wonder what that was like to have David Lee Roth as your babysitter.
I know.
That's scary.
She doesn't remember, but her mom remembers. Yeah. Who else, Rosanna? I mean, we had like the big hair band people too, like Poison, Def Leppard. We liked Queen. Who else? I loved Tesla. Do you guys remember
Totally
Tesla?
remember them.
No.
Oh, you would, Sonia, if you heard their songs.
Yeah, you'd remember.
Yes.
Michele, I have a question for you because, you know, I mean, everyone, we were in a time, I'm going back to like middle school because this kind of defines this music. Michael Jackson defines my middle school years.
Me
and
too.
People loved Michael Jackson. He was, you know, an icon of the time. But I wondered, what did you think? Because I took it to a different level when you talk about like the wallpaper and all that. And, you know, Sonia, you might have your thoughts on this too, since I knew you at that time too. But what did you think? Like, did you think your friend lost her mind or?
No, I mean, clearly there was a bit of an obsession there for him. And I thought it was kind of a safe haven for you, really. I think in my heart, I just felt like sometimes you wished you weren't home when you had to be. And it was like an escape for you and someplace where you could go in your mind and your heart to stop the noise, symbolically.
I would think too, because I was the same kid, like my wallpaper was Duran Duran. But when they talk about, right, from ceiling to the floor, and it's like, you kiss them all goodnight when you go to bed. But I think part of it too is when we talked about music in the 80s, and it wasn't as attainable. We didn't have social media. You didn't get 24/7 of your favorite person. You had to wait and see, is their video coming up? Are they being interviewed on VH1? And so there was that separation, and it's kind of like, well, you want them more. And so you bring them into your life in different ways than the kids nowadays do.
Yeah.
It's so true. And we don't have sort of that super stardom like that, like with Elvis or Michael Jackson, or where people are fainting, and it's unlike to be sort of around that. Michael Jackson was my first concert, and I was in the nosebleeds at Dodger Stadium with you.
I was with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even from way in the nosebleeds, way back there, when he hit the stage, I was crying and stunned. I was a mile away from him, that we were in sort of the same Dodger Stadium. Like, that was way too much for my little mind to take in. Yeah.
And I think in that time too, especially with him, and similarly, I'm sure back in the 50s with Elvis, they were iconic. They were godlike. They were bigger than life. I was super close and respected everything about what my mom liked. My mom loved Michael Jackson. I grew up before aerobics were a thing, with my mom on a blanket in our den playing Michael Jackson and Earth, Wind and Fire, like doing her own little aerobics. So it didn't throw me that much, really, that you loved him so much, because the world loved Michael Jackson.
It's true, the world, and it didn't matter your age or ethnicity.
He sort of transcended age.
He really did. And let's talk about Van Halen for a second. He had Eddie Van Halen play on Beat It, and Eddie Van Halen did it for no money, and he didn't even get credited for his solo. He just came in and did it because Quincy Jones had asked Eddie Van Halen to do it, and he did it. And that kind of crossover was new. Rock and roll and Motown kind of dance pop they did not mix, and so that was sort of the first of this featuring this.
Right. That was good. I ended up watching that thanks to TikTok last night.
I haven't gone there yet.
I'll admit it, but it was Michael and Eddie, and they were jamming, and it was really awesome. And it was that time. It was the 80s. Music was huge. So other part of the 80s that was huge was the beach culture.
Oh yeah.
Right. So talk about that. What was that like?
Well, I think it was particular. God, look at that. It is particular for our geography too. I mean, we were also close.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
but it was,
with your dad, Rosanna. I mean, those are my first memories of going to the beach, other than my, really young years. We'd go to Zuma, near Malibu, remember?
Oh, I totally remember. My dad, it was every summer, a handful of times. My dad would pack, like, it was just like a bunch of food, a big ice chest with all sorts of food and sodas and chips. The big boom box. Do you remember the boom box? Boom boxes were big. People would and the towels and all that. And we would just spend all day with the boom box until nighttime. And then go to Tommy's drive. What was that? Burgers or
Tommy's. We would go through Tommy's and get burgers. We ate like hell too, by the way. Our life was revolving around eating.
But you did a lot of aerobics or step aerobics, right?
We did aerobics too. Yeah. And we rode our bikes everywhere, which is different than kids nowadays too.
Yeah.
We did a lot of bike riding.
But Michele, the one thing I'd say, and this is just part of the supervision. I mean, like.
You mean the lack of supervision?
Yeah, we would just go and almost get taken in by undertows, and we.
Oh yeah. We were watching us.
Thrash around. No one's watching us.
No.
8, not, I was doing, growing up too. So there was a lot of, self-sufficiency even in the, beach scene and walking around and
That
you
picture
have cell
that
phones, so if you walked,
No.
you walked, you were
they
gone.
had to just wonder where you were. I couldn't deal with that personally as a mom. I'm very glad for the way we have it now, because that would have been hard. But that one picture of Rosanna and I at the beach, we used to go to Oxnard with my grandma. My parents were crazy enough, my aunt and uncle owned a house there, to let her take us and my brother and my cousin that were just 2 years younger than us. And we were just naughty kids. Like, Rosanna wasn't naughty. I was.
You were
naughty.
fearless. Yeah,
And
you were
I
the fearless.
drug her into my garbage. But like right around that day, my sweet little grandma, heavy set lady in a muumuu on the beach, watching these wild kids, bright red dyed hair. There were dolphins jumping through the water, and she was kind of naive, my grandma. And my brother and cousins were in the water, and I told her that they were sharks. And she jumped up and ran down the beach, telling the people on the beach that they're sharks.
Oh my gosh.
Running to the water to tell my brother to get out of the water, they're going to die. And it was just a follies of craziness. Stole her car that trip too, and we were 13.
So that's funny you talk about like what kind of craziness you had. I mean, thinking about your kids today, right? How do you think it really compares to your childhood, and what did you learn from your childhood that now you're kind of like, I got you guys dialed in, you can't do XYZ?
Yeah. You want to speak to that first, Rose?
Well, I'll start with just sort of like the overall, like what it was like. So like I said, when I met my first friend, I was 3 years old. And at 3 years old, I could walk to her house, which was like 2 houses away. And when I walked, there was no sidewalk on my side of the street. So I was kind of in the street at 3 years old, toddling along to go to my friend's house. And then we would toddle along and go to the park, which was like a block away. And we had to cross the street. So, that just at 3, 4, 5 years old, that just wouldn't happen. And in fact, now I have the instinct to, when my youngest was about 8 years old, I had the instinct to just let him go to the corner market, to do something. But he's also little for his, his age. He looks younger. And I was thinking, I wasn't afraid necessarily for him to go to the store. I was afraid that other people would go, who's watching you? Who's watching you? And like, why are you out on the street on your own? So yeah, there was just a way that, because there's also a downside to not being supervised or not having a lot of eyes watching. However, you do get to just figure things out yourself. If you get lost, you find yourself. If there's a little bit of trouble, you try to figure it out. And so one of the gifts that I wish that kids could have now is that to just be a little more free, and also to be bored. Like we were bored all the time. And I think Gen X is known for like having the most entrepreneurs out there in the world. And maybe that stems from, because we got to be bored and figure something out, think. And that it's like, just that space to just think.
So flipping that, what do you think would be the most awesome thing to have, the most rad thing to have in the 80s that the kids today have? Like, what would be the one thing that you would choose? Like, okay, let's bring that back to the 80s.
Oh, if we could take something from this generation of kids back to the 80s.
Yeah.
Gosh, I think the 80s was a better time to grow up, honestly. I do. For the reasons that you're saying, Rosanna, for sure. I think that, I'd like to say cell phones, but that it's not at all. That
I know what it is.
That ruined so many things. For the convenience of being able to you know, if you need a ride or what have you, or tell your parents where you are. But we did fine. We did fine with payphones.
I know, but you know what? You know what I think might have been helpful if I could bring something back? It was to have resources and information. If something was
Yes.
going on, you did not, and if no one
No.
around you knew, you just didn't know. So you were just sort of stuck with thinking something was off or wrong or bad, or
Right.
it kept stereotypes alive. It kept stigmas, you know, real. It just, now kids just can feel so, I mean, they get just so much more support and a little bit more normalcy about what's going on, whether it's gender nonconformity or sexuality, LGBTQ, you know, whatever it is. I mean, I can go on and on, from social, political, cultural, economical, you know, on and on, any kind of category.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, our communications was kind of delayed, right? We didn't have the internet. You had the encyclopedias, which were probably written years ago.
And microfiche, remember that, when you had to write paper, you had to go to the library, pull it, like just watching.
Yeah.
Or Rosanna, you went to college in both eras.
Mm-hmm.
You went before, and you got your doctorate degree when knowledge was at your fingertips. I know I don't want to traumatize you with grad school memories, but was it
it's real.
or harder to have?
Oh my God. Okay, so let me just tell you, day one of library education in the 2010 era. There's no library. There's no like place where there's books. There's no Dewey Decimal System anymore. And I'm sitting there with the librarian and a laptop, and I don't know what she's doing, but I had this 20-something-year-old next to me that would take my mouse and do my screen and her screen at the same time, because I was so lost. I could not figure out how to do the library. I was in tears. I mean, I ended up figuring it out, but yeah, I was like, it was very, very
way different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I
was traumatized by that.
Since 80s to now, I don't know. I can't answer what I would bring back, other than the way that we were. It's not something tangible, but the way we were with each other. The way that we would just sit and spend time together and hang out and talk all night long and dance and sing. And we just spent so much quality time together because we had the time. You go out now, or you see your kids with their friends, and they're all on their phone. Nobody's talking to each other. They're eating dinner across from each other, texting. It's like the connection, the human connection that was so special when we were young is not here anymore for kids. So and I think it's socially affecting them in a way that they have a lot of trouble with connectedness and bonding, where it came to us in a way because that's the only way we could do it.
And on that note, Michele and Rosanna, I feel very blessed to have you both in my life, because I experienced those years in junior high and high school and partly college with the two of you. And it was awesome. And the back house rocked. And so many rocked at that time. The music, the hair, crazy hair, the eyebrows, everything. I'm really blessed, and I just want to say, oh my God, you guys are both rad, and thank you for being our guest today on Story.
Oh, you're welcome.
Wow. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I could have done this all night long.
Yeah.
So fun.
And then
thank you guys for coming up with this platform and this idea. I think that you will have extreme success with this, and this is something that it's one of those things that somebody thinks of, and you think when you figure it out, why didn't I think of that? That is the coolest idea. And you guys, I think it's going to grow leaps and bounds.
And of course, it stems from two Gen-Xers as well. So.
Of course.
Yay.
You know how to think for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. You want to wrap up, Leilani?
Yeah. Sorry about the dog. That's what happens when, everything is live and we have to do this remotely. But Thanks for watching, everyone, this episode of Story Starters. Again, it's brought to you by My Legacy, and where we're trying to bring authentic stories from everyday people. So if you want to find out more about My Legacy and Story Starters, please go to my-legacy.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And if you want to be part of a future Story Starters, let us know on our webpage as well. Thank you, Rosanna, Michele, again. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.